let's go to the 3D view and take a look at adding a roof. We'll use in the Home tab, Roof by Extrusion. In the Conceptual Mass Modeling module, we'll take a look at Roof by Face as we create a 3D conceptual mass model and apply the roof to one of its faces. And then in a module later in the semester, we'll cover all of these other roof tools. We'll go to Roof and then Roof by Extrusion. In this Work Plane dialog box, they're asking us which plane we'd like to use to establish our profile for the extrusion. So we're going to pick a plane. Let's go ahead and pick OK. And the plane that we'll pick is the outside face of this wall. And we want it to be on level 3 as our roof reference. We can go ahead and pick OK. Now you have a choice. You can draw it right here in 3D, or you can go to the right view and draw it so that you can see it in a flat image. So I'll just draw it right here in 3D. I'll pick the spline tool. I'll start to draw an image profile for my roof. If you use the Shift key and the wheel of the mouse, you can see that I'm drawing this sketch of the extrusion of the roof. I can pick the green check mark to finish the sketch. And now that I have the roof in place and it's selected, I can use these blue small triangles to make it longer if I need to extend it for an overhang at the ends. Picking in the screen, we've finished our roof. Before we attach our walls, I just want to point out to you that anytime within the project, you can select that roof, pick Edit Profile, and change the profile. The roof itself will become updated when you pick the green check mark. Rest your pointer on one of these walls. Use the Tab key to select all of the walls, and then left click. Pick Attach, Top Base, and then select the roof. All of those walls will extend to the bottom of the roof. Type in VG to go to Visibility Graphics and take the check mark out of Roof so that we can temporarily turn it off. Pick OK. And now let's take a look at splitting a wall. We can go up to Modify in the Modify tab and pick Split with Gap. If we pick Split with Gap, we can come here over to this wall and left click and pull your mouse over and left click. And what that does is it splits the wall so that you can select that portion of wall and as an option change the wall type to curtain wall. I'm using curtain wall to have like a sheet of glass that I can create my own grid and then put mullions on that grid like we're cutting the glass. If we used exterior glazing or storefront, then it would be automatic and we'd be able to change the spacing and work with it in a different way. Let's go ahead and pick curtain wall. So we have this sheet of glass that we can use. We can go to the Home tab and pick Curtain Grid. You're able to now design your own curtain grid with vertical and horizontal lines. And you can see that there are temporary dimensions so that you can always change the spacing. These lines represent the glass that's cut. So now we can go to Mullion in the Home tab, and we can either have all grids with that specific mullion, or we can pick individual grid lines. We can change the mullion in the type selector to something a little bit smaller if you'd like, or a rounded one. And this is customizable too within the mullion family. Towards the end of the course, I'll show you how to create profiles for different features in Revit so that you can customize the defaults that come with Revit. I'm going to go ahead and pick this 1.5 by 2.5, and then notice that when I select the grid line, the mullion is attached to it. So if I select all grid lines and select this curtain wall, all the grid lines will have that mullion. Now let's take a look at putting a storefront door in this curtain wall. We'll need to load it, so we can go to the Insert tab, pick the Load Family icon, and under Doors, we want to load the curtain wall storefront double door. Now, the curtain wall storefront double door is not an actual door. If you try to look for it under the doors, it's not in this list. We'll need to select the panel and turn that glass panel into the door. So you'll make sure that your spacing for your grid is appropriate. You may even have to add and remove segments. Notice here that if you select the curtain grid, you have that option to add and remove segments. I'll go ahead and use my escape key. But what we need to do is to select that panel. If I get close to the curtain wall and use my tab key, you can tab until you see the glazing or the glass panel highlighted, and then left click. With the panel selected, I can change in the type selector it to storefront double door. And now I have a storefront door in my curtain wall. We're going to take a look at a couple of different ways of working with customized wall designs. We can select this wall, pick Edit Profile, and as we said before, you'll see this purple line, magenta type line that indicates your sketch. So if I wanted to use straight lines, splines, whatever shape I'd like, I can start to create this shape within the wall. Making sure that it's a closed loop, I can't leave that little piece there. I can now use the Split Element tool to split the line, and I'll just select this line here and here. You see this, there's an extra line there. I can delete that line. Now we can select the line at the bottom, and then inside this small circle we can hold our left mouse button down and drag our mouse back until we get to the end point of the spline. Let's do that for both sides. If you go to the left side of the line, Revit wants to select the spline. So we'll come over here to select the line, hold your left mouse button down in that circle at the end of the line, drag your mouse over and let go. Now that it's a completely solid piece, we can pick the green check mark to finish our design. Now this is one way of editing a wall, and now we can draw another wall as an exterior glazing that's inside this wall. And it will warn you that there are some overlaps. Just go ahead and ignore the warning, picking the X mark of the warning sign. Use your escape key to cancel the command. Select the wall, that's the second wall, and use these blue grips to make it big enough to fit in that custom shape. With that curtain wall selected, pick Edit Profile. And now we're going to be able to edit the profile of the curtain wall. Select here these outside lines and delete them. Then, with the Pick Lines option, we can pick the geometry that we created. And then select the line at the bottom and use these little blue circles to line it up to the end of that spline to create a closed shape. When we pick the green check mark, we've actually updated the profile of the curtain wall. Another way of editing a wall pattern or wall design is to use the Cut Geometry tool. The first thing we would do is to draw a curtain wall or an exterior glazing wall right inside an existing wall. You will get a warning that you can ignore. And I'm drawing these walls in 3D, but you could also draw them in the floor plan view. And then select that curtain wall and pick Edit Profile. Edit the profile of that curtain wall that's inside the existing wall. So I can delete this line and maybe create an arc. And then pick the green check mark. Now notice that the glazing or the curtain wall is still inside the other wall. So this is where I can use what's called Cut Geometry. In the Modify tab, we can pick Cut in the Geometry panel. Select here the wall, the original wall, and then select the curtain wall that's inside the other wall, and it'll automatically cut the exterior wall back to the curtain wall that we created. It's a newer option and it works very well in creating customized wall designs. Type in VG and put a check mark in front of roofs to turn our roof display back on. Pick OK. Now let's take a look at building a site plan with Topography. You can double click on the view site and notice that the elevation is in this view. We can select it and then right click, but instead of using hide and view category, we'll just use elements, hide and view elements, so that these elevation markers are still displayed. Select the circle for the elevation marker, right click, pick hide and view elements. And now we can select these elevations and drag them to a new position away from our building. Hold your left mouse button down and drag and drop it away from the building. Now in the Massing and Site tab, we can pick Topo Surface and change the elevation to 0, and then left click around our building to create contour lines. And change the elevation to -2 feet and continue to develop another contour line. You can then change it to 4 feet and continue to create your contours. Using your escape key, you can select one elevation point and change here the elevation to something different, like 5 feet, and see that it will take that one point another foot deeper. When you're done, pick the green check mark and then go to the 3D view and you'll see your contour lines. If your elevations were higher than the building, you could use a building pad which would adjust the topo surface with cut or fill as required for the building pad. We'll change the shading under the visual displays at the bottom left corner to shaded. Select the topography, and then in the properties palette you'll see material by category. Select by category and this small icon with the 3 dots. And here, if you scroll down, you'll see several site materials, and one of them is grass. You can highlight grass and pick OK. We may want to add a sidewalk or other features like a pond on this site. There are two options, split surface and subregions. Split surface will split the topography completely, making it harder to work with later on. But it is helpful if you'd like to completely split topography into different areas. If we use subregions, we can change the material surface of the topography. So we'll go ahead and pick subregion and then select the rectangle in the draw panel and then left click close to the building, pull your mouse out here and left click to create a small sidewalk. Pick the green check mark, select that sidewalk and change the material in the properties palette and then pick something like concrete and pick OK, and the surface will change to that material. At the bottom left, if you use realistic, it starts to look more realistic than the shading. In Revit 2013, they've made it look very close to a rendering. One last thing that we'll do with this project is we'll put a check mark next to section box and then zoom back and you'll see that there's a box here that we can select and use the blue arrows to crop the site, making it look more like a model. Then you can type in VG, and instead of using model categories like we did for the roof, we can pick annotation category and scroll down to section boxes, take the check mark out and pick OK. Also, some of you are familiar with the filter icon at the bottom right. If you select several objects and then pick the filter icon, you can pick check none in order to select the categories that you'd like to have highlighted, or you can now drop this list down in the properties palette to select the category and then see its properties. Using my escape key, I'd like to also show you that you can right click on the type selector to add it to the quick access toolbar. It becomes a drop down at the top of the screen, and that way you could type in PP, close the properties palette to get more screen space. If you'd like to remove it, you can right click and pick remove from quick access toolbar. Any of the tools that are in the ribbon can be added to the quick access toolbar by right clicking and picking add to quick access toolbar. Also under user interface, you'll see all of these items that are checked, like the view cube, the navigation bar, the project browser, and the properties palette. But at the bottom of this list, you can also select keyboard shortcuts, or KS will also bring that dialog box. You can use this dialog box to customize your keyboard shortcuts. I'll go ahead and pick cancel. We'll be taking a look at adding trees and people and rendering an exterior view later in the semester.